going in the reel.
I think it looks sick.
Hopefully.
This isn't a story about grief and loss, because death is normal. It truly is. Like, we're all gonna die, right? We're all gonna experience it. It's what we do with it is different from person to person. When I reflect back on my brother and the time that he got sick, I remember sitting with the oncologist telling Taurin, you have stage 4 cancer and you have 6 months to live. We were 3.5 years apart, and he was just always really sweet with me. I felt very fortunate. Not everybody has that with their sibling. He was just a lover. He was a giver. He was a really sweet soul.
God or the energy above or whatever, just the world, the energy that is, took me from this plane today. What would make me the most sad is knowing the grief that all you guys would feel.
The moment that he passed and he took his final breath, one of the things that he said was, life for my family. And I think in essence what he was saying there was like, I know I'm gonna go, and what's important for me is that my family lives. I went home, I was living in Boulder at the time, and I wrote life for my family on the window. And when I woke up the following morning, it was illuminated across my wall, my bedroom wall, life for my family. And I remember crawling to the wall and just putting my hands on it and then feeling like that was his instruction to me. In that moment, like, I really understood time. Initially, after losing him, I spent a lot of time outside. That was my healing space. I distinctly remember feeling like I could hear my brother and feel connected with him. I saw him in the trees and in the birds, and I could hear, like, auditorily, I could hear his voice talking to me.
Come over here. When's the last time you went climbing?
Outside? Oh, that's been a long time. I've got no solid footing.
If you let that anxiety take a grip, it's really hard to get out of it. And it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, if there is going to be one.
It was like closing the distance between he and I. I could reach him and be a little bit closer to him up in whatever plane he was in.
Take this heart of gold and melt it down, then I'll come around. I'll come around. I'm treading lightly in your eyes, honey, I can't live a But a life without you could never still me now.
It became very clear to me that my passion was being in the outdoors and then using the outdoors as a vehicle for personal and collective healing. Yeah. It's actually, can I show you a trick?
I was going to say, it seems to be a little backwards.
You can actually do it along this line, like put
Oh,
it in there,
inside.
and then it's just nicer. How do I look?
Good.
Locked?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool, you ready to do this?
Yes.
Okay. You are on belay. There you go. Nice. When my brother was diagnosed with cancer, a friend of mine was working at First Descents, which is a nonprofit that provides outdoor adventure-based programs for young adults impacted by cancer. And I kind of fell in love with the model and the concept and realized for the first time, you know, wow, that's the kind of organization and the mission I want to be working for. Nice work! Bringing people together, creating community, and using the outdoors as a vehicle for healing. I think you'd be proud to see what I'm doing now. His story has helped inspire me and then hopefully inspire others. As he was dying, he taught me how to live and gave me permission to live in a way that I wanted to live that maybe I wasn't allowing myself to. It's a chapter of my life, and there'll be another chapter after this, but this one's a really important one that I have to fully write, and then I'll have a better understanding of what I'm supposed to do next.
With so much time to spend, why paint this house again? When the floorboards creak and pull you from your slumber, I'd hold you till the end, but honey, even oaks must bend if we intend to stick with one another. So take this heart of gold and melt it down, then I'll come around, I'll come around. I'm treading lightly in your eyes, and honey, I can't live a life, but a life without you could never still me now.
So good to see you all.
It is.
It's so good to see you.
Can you guys believe it was a year ago we were doing this?
Was it really a year ago? Or
More than. It was over a year. Yeah.
We live in a different world now.
it is a very different world.
And it's not like today is anything important, right, guys?
It's just election night.
What an odd, you know what else? It's my grandmother's 92nd birthday. So
Really?
happy birthday, Mary Evelyn Rogers.
Happy birthday.
That's the most important event today.
That, well,
It's all
Says
really
I.
important.
cover your ears, Mary. Oh my gosh. I'm glad we're doing this today, given potential for me just crying all day tomorrow. So this is good that we're getting this done today.
Yeah. Are any of you doing box wine therapy after this?
I've got family baths after this.
Family baths. Okay. How about you, Sarah?
Extensive news coverage to catch up on from the day after we get done with this.
I haven't seen a single thing. Do you guys know anything at all right now?
No, been
I've been
working.
trying to not.
Yeah.
But there's been all this news. This morning I checked the New York Times and stuff, and they were saying just be careful not to like watch and trust too many early poll results. Just wait until like actual results are released. So, but I'll start watching it tonight.
Keep our fingers crossed. Okay,
Totally.
I have questions.
Oh,
And we haven't been together, the three of us, in this format, really even in a conversation, since the trip in the film. So this is fun to get a chance to talk to you guys. And I have my first question is for Mackenzie. And really, I'm just curious of like, what was it like for you to be able to tell your story to a group of strangers, and how did that initially kind of unfold for you? Like, how did you hear about, like, what's the elevator pitch on how you heard about, I guess,
yeah.
like outdoorfilm.org, and then what transcribed all the way to having us actually tell your story?
Yeah, so I first found out about the Outdoor Film Fellowship through Corey Bidney, who's a board member for the Outdoor Film Fellowship. Corey's also an old friend of mine from high school in Iowa, and an old friend of my brother's from high school as well. So he knew the two of us, and Corey and I have stayed in touch over the years. When I was working overseas, he and I started talking about potential stories that could be told at the intersection of social impact or healing work in the outdoors. And so we just kind of had this ongoing conversation for the past 4 or 5 years. And then finally, everything just kind of worked out. And there was a really beautiful story to tell with my sharing the story of my brother and my work with First Ascents. Honestly, I would say that I didn't realize it at the time until I was going through the process and after making the film with you all, that it was very cathartic for me to tell the story. I didn't realize how much I needed to tell the story, my story, and to be heard and to be listened to. So I found it healing in many ways. I think oftentimes as like siblings who have lost another sibling, sometimes, you know, your story isn't the first one that's heard as compared to parents or spouses or whatnot. So yeah, I found it natural, and I found it like a really organic healing experience for myself.
That's awesome. I always forget that Bidney and you guys went to high school together.
Yeah.
I always forget that you're an Iowa gal. I know you don't claim Iowa, but I know you're an Iowa gal at heart.
I moved from Miami to Iowa when I was 12 years old. And I don't think I met Corey until I was maybe 16, but we all hung out in the same age group, or the same group of friends. And what's funny is that I actually was dating one of his friends. And Corey and I kind of all hung out in this same social crew, but we didn't get to know one another super well. But I always really liked him and thought he was a cool guy.
I remember when he first told me about this story, and he was like, so we collect obviously we collect all these stories that we like, I guess, thumb through to decide, like, is this relevant? Does it fit within our format? Is it something that's a safe opportunity for our fellows? And he was like, here's the deal. I know this person. She's awesome. And I feel uncomfortable pitching this as one of our ideas, but he's like, this is an amazing opportunity to tell this story. Read this as if I don't know this person. And he set it up, I think, so professional, that when we read through it and kind of like really walked through the opportunity here. It was one of the easier decisions we've made. And as you know, we initially like kind of lived our world in our last programs internationally. And we were like, Colorado, you know, and because we were in Namibia and we were in Easter Island, like, and then we were in Colorado, and it really opened our minds up to like so many other opportunities. And why are we, you know, let's just let the story be what we focus on. And yeah, so we were honored to tell your story. And it was, it's fun that it came through a connection that is obviously so close to the organization and you, because I think it made maybe those initial days more comfortable, and those initial conversations that even you and I had on the phone really easy to like get the ball rolling.
Yeah, totally. It felt very personal. And I think it always, for me, it helped knowing Corey and knowing that he really knew me from way back when I was a teenager, and that he knew my brother. You know, having that connection with somebody on both sides that knows me well and knows my brother fairly well is rare these days. And it was really a special experience, because I was talking about my brother in a way that I think, you know, 99% of the film crew didn't know him, but Corey did. And so it was really special to see him there, even for part of the shoot.
Sarah, you being one of the fellows, and I guess this is funny to say that for those out there in this, like, whatever world we're sending this or creating this for, obviously, Mackenzie is Mackenzie, the legend. But Sarah, you are a producer on the film, but you also have like an incredible, I think, an incredible education background that fits this story so well. And you played so many pivotal roles in actually creating the film, but not just from a production standpoint, but from a story standpoint, from a connecting with Mackenzie standpoint, from a climber standpoint, from a psychology standpoint, kind of tying all of those in. Like, this was a kind of a perfect storm for you to be a part of this project. What was it like when you first got in and you kind of started, what were those first days like as you started to realize just how aligned with this project you really were?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that I was totally lost at first because I had no real film experience. You know, I had made small little things for myself and for school projects and stuff. But yeah, like you said, it was mostly an educational background that I strictly academic. And so I was really lost. And I remember we had our first shoot where you had me be the talent while the rest of the fellows did a fake shoot around me. And I was just enthralled with it. I was like, this is a whole process I didn't know. I had no idea about any of this or what it actually takes to get like a really nice shot and tell a story visually, because it's so much more than anybody would ever think it is. And once I started getting comfortable with those things, I started getting comfortable with that idea of the more you know, the more you don't know. And then I could start figuring out where my experience could fit in. And I think that it was a really nice match, really. And it was such a beautiful opportunity. And going through my last year of grad school in social work after the film too, I don't even know if Mackenzie knows this, but I took some classes on grief and loss. So doing therapy for grief and loss. And I realized that telling Mackenzie's story had actually really prepared me for some of that work that I was doing in those courses, which was cool.
Well, it's incredible to know that. And it's also incredible. It was incredible to watch you. I don't want to say like bloom, because you had such like you could have fooled everyone that you were lost, because you had such a great like air of not only confidence, but like you're such a natural leader. Like, I was always impressed, and like I think Mackenzie could say that we've talked about this, is that like your ability to connect and to lead is a natural gift that you have that really showed in this project. And it was evident from day one. And like whenever like it was like, without you, like I don't see how this film was completed. And so like for us, like I remember at one point Mackenzie was like, hey, I want Sarah around. I need her around. You know, you've said that to me a handful of times. I want her a part of this interview. I want her a part of this, whatever it was. And you may not know it, Sarah, but behind the scenes, you were a really big crutch for Mackenzie. Is that fair to say, Mac?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we did the personal interview at my mother's place up in Lyons, I wouldn't have been able to do that interview with anybody else. Not that the rest of the crew wasn't equipped to do it, but it was more of like the energy between us and the connection between us. And I mean, we've maintained a friendship post the filmmaking process anyway. So I think I just had this natural gravitation towards you. And then I didn't know that you had this training in grief and loss. So that all makes sense now. But the way you worded things and the questions you asked just kind of pulled a really honest and open response from me.
Well, and that was just the most beautiful day too, filming
Yeah.
at the interview and at your mom's house, and just the background and you, and it was just like, it was the most perfect interview setting. And Adam, I know it must have been really hard going back and forth and not being able to, you know, just be with us the whole time, and having to do all this behind the scenes work back home and be a dad and all of this stuff. And I don't know, what was that process like for you?
It was weird. And yeah, I mean, because I'm obviously so excited about like every day of the shoot. But yeah, like being a father, like I'd come back but then I'd be like spending time with Ruthie and Charlie, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing in the world. And I'd be, you know, in stitches leaving to come back. But our leadership on this project, like when you have like Tommy Penick, Thomas Woodson, like Jenny Nichols, like you've just got such an incredible group of leaders, like making sure that this entire project goes off without a hitch. It was almost, it was so comfortable. It was easy to leave. But yeah, not being a part of the story was one thing that I really.
You were part of the story.
No, but like not being a part of like the daily. You guys know I'm a control freak, and I'm obsessive about it. And so that's probably what I would say the most would be, is that like I wasn't a part of every detail of it. And you know, I think that's something that I work on often, but with this one, I didn't have to be afraid that it would be a bad outcome. I just had a lot of intensity around Mackenzie and the intensity of her story. Not to say that the past stories we've done haven't been incredibly serious, but this one just felt a lot closer, that if it didn't work out perfectly, or how I thought it should, or maybe how Mackenzie, if I didn't meet her expectations, I would have felt really bad about the project.
And why is that, Adam? You said that a couple times to me. I'm just wondering where that comes from and how that.
Well, I mean, I think it's just natural. I mean, I think that the natural sentiment of the story is one thing. And if we were just telling a story that you weren't the subject matter of, and maybe just telling your story in a fun, unique way, that's one thing. But like when we meet you, and you're such an incredible human being, when we meet your mom, who is like I can't think of her without like having like some level of like emotional connection. It's like that's when the stakes start to get higher with this, and you realize the impact of what you're doing is not just fucking around with your friends and cameras and like hanging off of mountains. It's you graced us with the privilege to tell your story, and it's now our obligation to do our best to represent you well. And I know that we could have thrown all of the footage away, and it would have been like, no one would have known if we made a bad story about you, and we would have just not shown it. But I think that the stakes were high enough, and that the professionalism around it was high enough that I knew that we had everything we needed to make it, I think, what it became. And that was important to me.
That's really interesting. It sounds like, well, I didn't know until now, I'm going through this and observing this process with you all, is like the responsibility that's placed on filmmakers, and like how much actual control they have and power they have to influence and to share and tell stories, and how that must feel very empowering in some ways, but also a tremendous sense of responsibility, especially if you're like in documentary filmmaking.
Yeah. Sarah, was there a point that it hit you? Is there a point that you were like, oh shit, we've got a lot of responsibility here?
Yeah. I think yeah.
Yeah.
There are probably a few, but the one that definitely comes to mind is when we went and actually filmed First Descents. And that was such a privilege to get to do that. And I know it is not a privilege afforded to many people to get to be outsiders in those groups, even if just for a couple hours. And I think that's when it really hit me, that, because that's really the culmination of a lot of the story. Not even the culmination, I guess it's a chapter of the story, as Mackenzie says.
Yeah.
That, you know, the loss of her brother led her to this work that she's been trying to find and wanting to do, and had almost prophesied for herself. And so seeing that and seeing the people who are involved in that work and them letting us in was really humbling.
I remember that day. That was a freak out day for me. That was the day that I called Mackenzie and I was like, we gotta bail. This is not good. We don't have anything we need. I was like, okay, panic, calm down. Mac, do you remember that call? That was not good.
I remember that
I
call.
was at the coffee shop in Estes Park. Yeah.
That was, we'd gone through a bunch of stuff and I was reviewing footage and like looking at transcripts and then being like, I just had a freak out moment. And I'm glad that everybody helped to walk me off of that cliff, because I was like, yeah, that was a moment. I remember that day so much, and being like, you guys were having such a beautiful thing, and I went and fucked it up with like this like crazy ass phone call. Like I remember feeling really guilty about that day.
Well, it probably plays into what you were saying about the weight that you felt, and that, you know, you were trying to pull the ripcord, because at that point it just felt like a lot of pieces. It didn't feel like it was all together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Adam.
Mac, what was it like talking like about Sarah and going back into a program with a film crew, telling your story? Kind of like, what was it like I wasn't there that day, but what was that day like for you, going to a program being run by First Descents, really being at the end of the film project as a whole, and like being there? Was that significant to you?
I think it was pretty amazing to go into a program. We were attended an Estes Park rock climbing program. The scenery was really beautiful, and the staff working the program and the participants working the program or attending the program had invited us to join them at Campfire. And Campfire is like a intentional conversation that happens in the evening outside. And it's usually a pretty kind of deep and reflective experience and time for people to share. And I found it pretty remarkable that everybody was just excited to have a film crew there. And the film crew was pretty good at like maintaining distance and staying in the background, kind of hiding behind various things or trees or people and trying to get good shots here and there. I don't think it really affected the group experience too much. They were just clearly pros. I think it was really neat to see that. I think it was a different experience for me, because that time is really about the participants and the opportunity for folks impacted by cancer really share their story. So it was different for me to be the one in the spotlight, for lack of a better term. So in terms of how that experience was for me, it was just different. Yeah. I think generally I was so thankful and grateful for the openness and receptivity from everybody to have us there, because it's rare. And then it was just different for the camera to be kind of pointed on me. But I did think that the team was great. They were super pro, and they did a really good job of catching shots of other folks too.
And you guys ran with a skeleton crew on that shot, right? It was only a few of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was Jenny and you and me and Amanda and Anna.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a small group
Awesome.
compared to the.
Jenny and I tried to hide while Anna and Amanda were running around campfire catching photos.
Yeah.
And shots. It was great.
I mean, when they pulled the red out, which is the big, fancy, beautiful camera, I mean, that was spectacular to have that there. And just to see the awe and the amazement in Anna and Amanda's eyes getting to shoot with a red was so cool.
I remember that first day they were shooting, we were up at Homestake, and we were climbing, and we got some of those shots of you like racking up and like kind of looking at your routes. And I remember the light was coming in there so nice, and it was just this like perfect glow that everyone was like, can I see the monitor? Like, look how cool this is. Like, it was, I think that was the day that a lot of people realized like we're making a film. Like, it wasn't like the intensity of like the subject matter, but at this, it was like, oh no, this is game on. We're making something really incredible here.
Absolutely. And I just, Sarah, before you moved to Vail, maybe like 2.5 months ago or something like that, I went and camped at Homestake and climbed there for the day on the way to a retreat up in Crestone. And I hadn't been back to that zone since we all spent time there, and it was so nice to be there. I don't know if you've been there, but that place holds so many memories for me that it was like, it was super sweet to be there, but it was kind of bittersweet at the same time.
Yeah, totally. I go back there and I run there a lot. I haven't actually climbed there since I moved here. But yeah, it just has a weight somehow to it.
Yeah.
And I actually find myself going to your meditative spot by the river all the time.
Really?
For those of you who don't know, there's a really beautiful spot in Minturn where Mackenzie did a lot of meditating in the wake of losing her brother. And it's now a spot, that I go to a lot.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful.
But I'm also like, oh my God, now another person has a high probability of getting eaten by a bear. I remember going in there and people were like, there's like a lot of bears in there, like a lot of bears. I was like, yes.
We were a group of like 13 people. It's more scary. A bear is 13 somewhat young, excited people around a red camera.
I think I'd be more worried about the mountain lions there. But
oh yeah. Mac,
I'm so happy to hear that, Sarah. That's really sweet.
Yeah.
One thing I think is beautiful about that story and like how I like that, Mac, you now have a second memory to something that in an area that maybe wasn't, I don't know if I say it wasn't pleasant, but it was you went there to struggle and to fight for yourself and kind of for the future. And it's beautiful. I've never thought about this before, but as you guys talk about this, it was at one point only a place where you went to heal in the outdoors. And now when you go back, it's a place that you went to heal in the outdoors, and you have the opportunity to heal even further through sharing your story. And there's a whole different subset of memories and experiences there. And to have Sarah going there to meditate on that rock, like with that huge waterfall, like, it's crazy of how a perspective switches on a place that maybe at one point in my mind might have felt desolate and fraught with, with tragedy, is now like this beautiful triumph of recovery and a change of perspective.
Yeah, that space holds so much weight for me, both beauty and tragedy and grief and joy. There's just, it feels like a kind of like a vortex. I don't know, like just a really powerful place for me. And I'll always remember it. And I think I'll always, probably for the rest of my life, continue to go back there. It's one of those places where it's like, yeah, that place is where I went through a tremendous amount of experience and change. And it's really cool to hear that like Sarah's now since moved there, and in some ways, I don't know, she's sharing in that space too, and enjoying that same beauty that I would surrounded myself with really for like 4 or 5 years.
I love that.
One, yeah, that area makes a quick appearance in the film at some point, and when we're talking about what it was like in the aftermath of losing Taurin. And a question that I actually was wondering about for you, Mackenzie, is when you go back and watch the film now in its final product, because we're talking about all this process, and then there's actually a film that you see. Is there any particular part of it that really gets you, like a moment that takes you back to that time in your life in all these places that we visited?
Every aspect of the film is special to me and brings up a different experience. But I would say that the most memorable segment of it was shooting in El Dorado Canyon. I think the whole process of getting up really early, and everybody was freezing, and we were in down jackets and gloves, and it was not even light out, and it was maybe 4:30 a.m. or 5 a.m. or something like that, and we were shooting, was really cool and special and unique to go through that experience together. You know, rewatching the film, I think that that's where the turn starts to happen, is like this whole initial conversation that I'm having about my experience with the immediacy of losing my brother, but then also like how I start to build a relationship with it through the outdoors, and how I find the beauty in life and joy in life and connection to myself and him in the outdoors. And I guess when I rewatch the film, that's my favorite part, is like the colors, the like up close shots of my feet, the shots of us far away, and just kind of like the magnitude, the size of the wall that we were climbing, and how from like a filmmaking perspective, how involved it was. Like it was a really intimate experience to be doing that with you all, sharing my story, but then also, up on the wall with some members of the team too. That's was my favorite part.
I mean, that was a crazy day. That was a beautiful day. It was one that like, I feel like most of us got to sit back and just enjoy. Like we got to sit back and watch, and it was fun to be a spectator at such a beautiful place. Sarah, do you have a part of the film or that hits you really hard, or that you love or just obsessed with?
Yeah, it's when the Mandolin Orange song really hits, while she's also an Eldo on the wall, and that's when I just lose it, because I think, I think, which kind of like, I was wondering for you, Adam, for me, it's the feeling that the film evokes, which I think is, personally, I think it's stunning. I think also it's the weight of what she was going through, which then brings up for me the weight of when I've gone through things like that. And Adam, I don't know for you, I think this film in general is a film that kind of brings things up from the depths for people, or it can. And I don't know if it does that for you, or how that might go.
It does. And in like unique ways, I'm such like an emotional, like I could cry just talking about this right now. I am an emotional dad. And I remember, I was like, had Spotify on, and I didn't know who Mandolin Orange was. And I heard that song and I start crying. And I'm like thinking of like at this point, like my kids, and all of a sudden it hits me. I'm like, that would be an awesome song for this film. And I was like, maybe I should reach out to them. I don't know. They're on Spotify. Like they're like, no way they're going to get back to me. And I reached out to their like, I don't know, executives or whoever their companies were or whatever. And like within days they were like, yeah, let's talk about it. And they were like, yeah, sure. And what's your budget? And we were like, we really don't have one. And they were like, we don't care. We love this. It's a great project. We'd love to put weight behind it. And like, when they said yes, and like, we cut that song in, and like, all of a sudden you see like Mackenzie look up and it starts playing. Like, I was just like, this is such an incredible part to this. So yeah, a huge thanks obviously to them and their companies. And to answer your question, I guess more directly, the part that hits me is when we were scrubbing for just like additional B-roll, and all of a sudden we stumble across the phone interview that Mackenzie you did with Taurin, with your brother.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I can remember calling you and being like, holding the phone and being like, who's the guy? And you were like, my brother. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, oh my. And I was just like, I just kept listening and I was like, we've got to figure out how this gets in here. And we tried so many different ways. And I think that in the end, the editors set it up perfectly to just come in and it just evokes like this. And maybe, I don't know if a lot of people who watch the film initially even realize like that's who that is at that exact second. But I think obviously over time it starts to impact more. But that's the part to me that like always evokes like some level of holding on to those conversations and I don't know. I don't know. There aren't words that I can probably describe of how powerful that point is for me.
Yeah, that was a real gem to find. And it was like so serendipitous that I had recorded that. I remember distinctly laying on Taurin's bed, I think it was some months before he passed, and us having this conversation. And I just had this like thought that was, I should record this because I don't know how many more of these conversations we're going to have. And it's so cool now to see it integrated into a film and shared with so many people. But yeah, I still sit and listen to that. And my mother sometimes, she recently wrote me like a couple days ago by text, and she said, I'd really like to sit and listen to that recording. I miss his voice. I'd like to hear what it sounds like again. So yeah, it was really sweet to find that and to work that in. I know that like the audio file was not the best, and you and your team worked really hard to just get it in there so there wasn't so much like noise pollution, and so it was audible. But yeah, it worked perfectly.
It was so important to get it in. So important.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, I agree. So granted, we don't have a ton of time left here, and I could do this for hours with you guys. Well, one of the questions I have, how has this expanded like what you're wanting to do with First Ascents? How is First Ascents utilizing this experience both professionally and personally? Like, how are you moving on from this, and where are you headed?
I mean, 2020 has been a rough year for everybody. My hope is that this film can share a little light and love and joy with people during just a tumultuous time, politically, economically, socially, and that sharing this story with the FD community, that we're able to create connection and bond, and a sense of just relevance to people in a really isolating time, through storytelling. But through work, traditionally we run outdoor adventure programs for young adults impacted by cancer and MS as well. And, when COVID hit back in spring, we were trying to figure out how we can continue to extend the healing power of adventure in our programs to communities. And we couldn't continue to serve the oncology and MS community, but we thought, well, we could pivot and we could start to serve healthcare workers on the front lines of COVID-19 response efforts. That's a lot of how I've been kind of channeling my energy and what my team has been doing and what the organization has been doing. We've received over 10,000 inquiries from healthcare workers across the country from Seattle to New York interested in attending our free of cost programs. And I attended a rock climbing program in the Gunks a few weeks ago, and that was really remarkable to hear the stories and sit around with healthcare workers that are just, seeing COVID firsthand in inner city Manhattan and what that's like for them. And to just really continue to see how much power just getting folks outside and into natural outdoor spaces is for them, even for 15 minutes. And then combining that with the experience of getting to connect with others and peers that are going through a similar experience with them is pretty profound.
That's an incredible pivot for your organization to switch and to say, hey, we have opportunity, we have the will and the desire to continue to help people. Who needs the most help right now, that in a safe way, and to be like, how do we could pivot to help these like first responders, people on the front lines. Like,
absolutely,
that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, they're going through trauma and grief and loss as well, but it just in a different kind of way and in a caregiving role predominantly. But many of them, are impacted by COVID, whether they get COVID themselves or their family members do, or they're serving folks that are COVID patients. So it's pretty remarkable work. I'm just excited to continue doing that. And continuing to get outside and recreate and responsibly and climb and take time for myself as well.
That's incredible. Well, it was an incredible honor to be able to do this project with you guys and to have First Ascents be a part of this, an organization that we all respect so much. And obviously to have like so many incredible people. Like, it's crazy. You don't realize, and we were a small project, right? I mean, we were a small film, and we have lists of people all across the country that like contributed to this project. So it's it's humbling and hopefully something that we can continue to do.
Adam, what are you going to do next? I'm sure it's about you.
Yeah, hopefully this program, we can continue to tell stories like yours, Mackenzie, and have incredible fellows like Sarah and the entire team be a part of it and do more with it. And so I don't know, we'll see where it goes, but I've been inspired to spend more time outdoors and to share that with my family and to continue to learn how to climb and to, I don't know, it is healing. And one of the things I think is the best part of this program and the film is that like we all need healing in the outdoors. Like, our world would be better if everyone went out for recess every day.